Welcome back to the podcast, Bree. This is sort of your third appearance. We had our original episode. You submitted a clip for my episode about how to cope when the whole world's on Ozempic. And now here we are for a third episode on picture grief.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yay. So I've been wanting to talk about picture grief for a while. It comes up all the time, as you know. And to me, no better person to talk about this with than you. I learned about the term picture grief from you. So I think it'd be helpful if we can start by defining what is picture grief, and then we'll get into really concrete tips for how do we navigate this.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the way that I sort of interpret picture grief is that moment when you look at a photo and you have an emotional experience because of the way that your body looks. So this could be looking at a photo of you having I'm sorry, this could be looking at a photo of a pastime where your body is smaller and missing that body. It could be hanging out with friends, taking a photo, and then feeling devastated by what you see in that photo. It's not what you were expecting. And I think that the term grief, right, in its encompassing definition is loss that causes distress. And sometimes it's even perceived loss that causes distress. And so I think when we're taking a photo, there is a distress because of what we think we've lost or what we think we will lose because of what we are seeing.
Yes. And I want to add, like, this is deeper than just pictures. Like, it
Yeah.
could ruin your night. It could, you could be having a great time, see a photo and be like, oh my God, I look like that. I gotta go home. I gotta go to the bathroom and try and change everything about myself. Like, it
Yeah.
can absolutely take you out of the moment. Or
Yep.
if you look at a photo after the event or whatever the thing was, it can make you second guess and feel like, was that whole night a lie? Like, did I experience
Yeah.
that completely different than I appeared, in this photo?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're not on Instagram, so you wouldn't have seen that I had recently just posted this. I had spoken at a conference this weekend and I wore an outfit. And I remembered while I was on stage that 5 years ago, I had tried to wear a similar outfit. And as soon as I saw a photo of myself, anxiety took over my body. The distress level was off the charts, so much so I had to change. This is not, 2000 Brie. This is 2019. I was already body image with Brie at that point. And even I still had picture grief. So much so that I couldn't even wear the outfit. I couldn't accomplish the task of the body image exposure of wearing this crop top. And then not only did I not like what I was seeing in the photos, but then I felt like a fraud. I felt like
Mhm.
I had failed. But it was because of that failure that allowed me to really dive deep into this topic of picture grief, of why is it so hard to see something in the mirror or in a picture that is not what I think I see in my mind. What is
Mhm.
so devastating about that? And how do we move through that?
Yeah. So before we get into tips, can you talk about that a little? Like, why is this so hard?
So I think there's a multitude of reasons. From a neurospicy ADHD perspective, part of me is wondering, is this a little bit of RSD? Are you familiar with RSD, rejection
Mhm.
sensitivity
Oh, yes.
dysphoria? I know that even for myself, like sometimes I have expectations of myself or of how things are going to go. And when they don't go that way, I am devastated. And then there's a logical part of my brain that's like, you're ridiculous. Why are you so upset? This even happens like around my birthday. I love my birthday. I think my birthday should be a national holiday. But then it's like, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do for my birthday, but it's got to be great. And then I spend all this time having this expectation for this day. And then when it doesn't turn out that way, then I'm sad. And I'm like, well, what if I change the expectation for the day? What if it's
Mhm.
like, hey, on my birthday, I'm going to do whatever it is that I want to do. I'm going to honor myself, honor my body. And that exponentially changed the preemptive grief that I felt around my body. And so I think with pictures, um, I think some of it is the false expectations of what we think that picture is going to show. It's almost like when you do art. I don't know if you're like an artist or a singer, right? When you think, oh, I know how to sing this note, and then you sing it, and you're like, that wasn't right. When you are doing art, like, oh, I'm picturing this in my brain, and then you're like, nope, that's not what I was thinking. when you look at a photo of yourself, if it's not what you were seeing in your mind,
Yes.
now there's this separation of what's reality versus what you're seeing or
Yeah.
perceived reality.
I'm just thinking about how this is made so much more dramatic by social media because it's like everyone looks like a supermodel. And I think we,
Yeah.
without saying it, like so many of us, and I've definitely seen this with my clients, like low key hold this probably even like partly unconscious expectation that like I'm gonna look like a supermodel. And it's
Hmm.
just like
Hmm.
obviously setting you up to fail because you're not. Or like maybe like one picture in a blue moon, you'll feel like that, but mostly that's not realistic.
Well, and I also think too, so I think back to that 2019, photo experience. And, it was really distressful. It was on a scale of 1 to 10, low, medium, high. It was a 9 or a 10 that I had to change. I could not even access what was happening in the moment. And then the shame of not being able to do it. But when was able to reflect on it later, one of the things that I recognized is I hadn't been taking photos of my body for years. I only took photos of myself when I was dieting. So
Mm,
that's what's in my mind is the thinner, disordered version of myself. I have no context or reference to another point, to another version of myself. I think the other thing too is, things may not always be as they appear. And even just recently, I would say probably might have been in the summer. I was with a group of friends who were all fat and in larger bodies. And we'd taken a photo. And in my mind, I thought I looked so cute. And when I saw that photo, I was like, oh, that's not what I thought I looked like in my mind. But here's the difference is I was able to see a version of my body that I didn't necessarily like or didn't match my expectation, but it didn't devastate me.
mm,
And
yeah.
that's the difference is that when it devastates you, that's actually where we want to look, not in the differentiation of what you're seeing.
Yeah, I also am thinking about this distinction of like that's a bad photo versus like I'm a bad person because I look bad in this photo or something I am bad, which is just like no, there are bad photos, totally, but that doesn't mean anything about who you are as a person.
Yeah. I think what I hear from folks is like the shame that comes up around taking a quote unquote bad photo is this must be what other people are seeing.
Mm,
This must be what other people are seeing. And I have a podcast episode from earlier this year. I think it's called How to Make Your Body Image Suck Less. And at the time, I had been experiencing some elevated levels of body grief in that I'm looking at reflections of myself and I'm being critical, or I'm taking photos of myself and I'm being critical. Now, in this time, I'm going out on dates. I was talking to somebody who was very complimentary of my body and of myself. Like the things in my brain were not matching how I know myself to be. And it gave me evidence of, hey, something is off. Something
mm,
is not correct. I asked myself in that time, what else is going on that's not like me? And I noticed,
mm,
hey, I'm really second guessing myself when it comes to things. Like, should I go to this Pilates class or should I go to a yoga class or should I just, I was like, hey, that's not like me either. I can be pretty decisive when I need to be. And so what I did when I was exploring that grief was part of what had happened was I had been really sick.
mm,
And I think it created a level of distrust with my body.
mm,
And that was manifesting itself in picture grief. That
mm,
I was being critical of my body. And when I sat and from an IFS perspective, internal family systems, interviewed the part and I asked criticism, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to help me from? And it said, I'm trying to help you stay safe.
mm,
Because if I can critique you first, then it's not going to hurt as much if someone else does it.
mm,
And we know that to not be true. And so when I recognized, okay, the job you're doing is not actually doing what I need it to do, then I had to figure out, well, now what do I do with this? How do I navigate away from this?
mhm. Yeah, okay. So we're already getting into
We
some
can
of the
stop.
tips.
We can keep going if you want to dig deep.
Yeah. So let's like name that tip. I feel like that tip is like ask ask the criticism, you see a photo and you feel critical, ask the criticism, why are you here? Like from an IFS perspective.
I would say even before that is we're going to distress scale it and
Hmm.
determine, do I have capacity to explore this?
Okay, so you see a bad photo. You're on the Uber ride home from an event. You're checking your camera roll, and boom,
Your
ooh,
body is
yikes.
filled with shame. You want to cry.
Yep. And you
First
call it
question.
like that oh shit moment. I love that way of like like your heart drops and you're like, oh shit, it looked like that.
Yeah.
So first thing I'm hearing you say, which is so often the first step with body image work, and I love it, distress scale.
Yeah.
So for folks who aren't familiar, scale 1 to 10, 10 being the most distressful, or if you're a person who can't pick a number, low, medium, high. And you mentioned see if you have the capacity to explore. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So going back to my 2019, body image, crop top exposure, I was just going to push through. I was like, I literally feel like I'm like it would be easier for you to light me on fire right now. That was how much distress I was feeling. And I was like, let's just go. And my friend looked at me and she goes, I think you need to change. I'm like, why? Because it looks bad. And she said, no, you look so uncomfortable. I said, I am uncomfortable. And what I thought was I needed to get through that moment so that I could recognize, hey, it's okay. But here's the thing is me pushing through would not have brought me to the moment of, hey, I can wear a crop top and it doesn't hold the same, power or shame just by pushing through. You do not need to push through to get there faster. It doesn't actually work. So instead, if when you feel that intensity of emotion, you pause and say, okay, this doesn't feel the way I want it to feel right now. Can I explore it? Or do I need to just figure out how to cope right now? This is going to be a really helpful tool, especially around the holidays. When you are already in a situation with your family, you're at an event, that might not be the time that we sit and explore our photo grief. So instead, first thing we do, if we assess, hey, you know what, it's distressful. One of the things I like to call it is like if body image is an archaeological dig, we have just hit on a landmine, but we don't need to explore the landmine. We can put a flag here and we can come back to it later. And
Mhm.
can you give yourself that permission of, okay, this is where my brain wants to go right now, but I don't have space for this. I don't have capacity. I'm gonna put this here and I'm gonna come back to it later.
I love that. And if it is a good time, you're not in the middle of the family event, you are at home, you have the space for it, the distress isn't so activating that you have no access to your emotions, and you want to explore it deeper, then what do we do?
Great. So you've decided I have capacity to explore this. That would be then when I would say, what is the story that's coming up for you? What part is trying to save your life? And what is their job? What are they trying to do? That's when we might want to interview this part. I also want to just add in we need to continue to assess the distress level at every iteration of the process because you might get to this step and then be like, oh no, now I'm feeling a higher level of distress. This is the first way we get to honor our body is by listening to the distress. And if you don't know and you're like, I think I have the capacity to explore, or if I don't explore this, I don't see how I'm going to move through it. Fine. But can you continue to tune in of, does this still feel like something I can explore? And if
Yes.
not, coping skills, coping skills are not meant to change the situation. They're meant to bring you from a higher distress to a lower one. So my goal always is when I feel a level of distress, if I am at a 9, my goal is to get to an 8,
Mm-hmm.
to an 8 or an 8.5, not to get to a 0.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay. So if we have the capacity, and we're going to keep checking in about that because it can change with every layer deeper of the archaeological dig. If we
Correct.
have the capacity, we're asking, what's the story that's coming up for you? Or what is this part trying to keep me safe from? You gave a great example of um, sometimes we're trying to criticize ourselves because we feel like if we do that, it will hurt less if others criticize us, which
Yeah.
isn't true. It still sucks just as much.
Yeah, this is where we're going to want to do a little bit of that like exploration of the core belief, right? What the story that's coming up is just the surface, but it's being fueled and motivated by an underlying story. And so I can tell you back from that 2019 photo in that crop top, there was a fear that I would be not taken seriously by potential, men, or even more importantly, by people in my field. That
Mhm.
was the fear that I had of like, you're going to see how fat I really am. And
Mhm.
and it exposes a a fear not of anything other than the fear of not belonging, of being on the outs. And so this part was just trying to be like, we don't want to be othered. We don't want to be on the outs. So we're going
Yeah.
to stop that. We're going to make sure that we don't feel that.
Yeah. So once we have that belief and we have clarity or some information that this is perhaps the story or the core belief that's coming up of I don't want to be found out, of this is how I really look, or I don't want to not be taken seriously or othered, then what?
Yeah. So when we know the part, when we know what it's trying to do, then we get to determine, is it doing a good job? Is it doing the job that it set out to do? In the earlier this year, 2020, 2025, when I had been sick, I had had like back to back, like obscure, I had like an allergic reaction, and then I had just like a random illness. And the story that was coming up for me was like, I can't trust my body. I cannot trust my body to protect me. And what I needed to do was I needed to grieve.
Mhm.
I needed to acknowledge that not only living in a world where fatness is demonized, that any health ailment that I experience is my fault. That's going to be the assumption from the world. That doesn't jive with me. I can already acknowledge that fear is bullshit. But what I couldn't get over or get around was this was missed. This was missed because of negligence from my medical team. That
Mm.
even no matter how much I advocate for myself, I won't be able to protect myself. Let me pull up um, I did a little journaling around that. And so one of the tools that I use with my clients and for myself is the concept of anchoring. Oftentimes when we are in the midst of a body image spiral, it can just feel like we are circling that drain and there's no relief. The only thing that happens in that spiral is eventually it stops, it becomes less intense. So when I start to notice that spiral, when I start to notice, okay, you know what? This is several days unending where I can't shake this feeling or this thought or this belief. I go to my anchors list and I wrote down all of the things that help anchor me when I am feeling dysregulated. So often we want that sexy, cerebral body image, like, give me the formula. But more often than not, the solution is body based. It is a
Mm.
somatic experience where your brain is working overtime when it's really just your body that needs to know, like, hey girl, we're okay. We're
Mhm.
safe. And so on my anchors list, I have, connection, things that bring me to connection, that help me connect to my body. For me, that includes some movement. It's usually gentle movement, like a stretching or if I'm gonna move my body, doing it with somebody else.
Mhm.
That co-regulation, or something that's fun. I found there was a lot of times in that season where I would just wake up with music on, and I was like, "Oh, my body feels exponentially different when I'm playing music, and I'm gonna just dance, and nobody's here, nobody sees me, and I'm just gonna let my body do what it needs to do." Sensory. This is also for very neurospicy friendly as well. But I hear this critique from people of like, I get activated by the elastic around my pants. When I am feeling especially activated in my body, I'm gonna wear free, flowy clothes. I'm wearing a dress right now for that same reason of I want to not feel any extra sensory because it's not gonna solve it, but it's going to make the experience less distressful. And then the last piece is the grief. And it's naming the grief, releasing the feelings, and then asking myself what I needed. And so I wrote down some reminders that when it feels hard, this is where another step or tip could be creating that impactful reframe.
Mm.
For most people, I think in that moment, it's going to be I need to say something that I believe to myself
Mhm.
that feels true, that doesn't feel like a You're beautiful
Right.
inside and out. Like, don't make me roll my eyes. And so, one of my favorite reframes that I come up with is I know I'm going to look back on this with kinder eyes.
That's such a good one. And I have that written down here to talk about how so often we experience greater distress the moment we see the photo
Yes.
versus when we have space from it, and talk about years of space. Often you can't even remember that it was distressing at all, and you think, oh, I look great in that photo. What was I even thinking?
That's what makes body image healing so hard, is because it's really hard to measure. But if we can do more of this exploration, if we can gather more of this data, then over time, you will be able to use that information and move through it. And
Yeah.
here's the thing is you are not a bad person if you don't like what you look like.
Yeah. Like, is that okay with you? Can
Can
you
that be
still
okay?
live through your values and share what your gifts with the world, even if you don't like how you look in photos?
And so here was one of the like the reframes and the reminders that I came up with. Um, pain can be unjust and not your responsibility to resolve.
Mm,
Criticism cannot protect you from rejection and neglect. This fear that, okay, well, if I'm unsafe in this body, I can't protect me. And I said, you know what? Maybe the people who are set to protect me, like my doctors, might not be, but I've surrounded myself with a team of people who will. I know I have a therapist. I know I have dietitian friends. I know that I have an aunt who's a doctor who will advocate for me. And
mhm.
so we get to sit in the suck that it's not easier, but it
Yeah.
also doesn't mean that your worst fear will come true.
Yes. So bringing this back to pictures in a really concrete way for people, right? We're distress scaling. If we have the capacity, then we're looking at it. If, once we have the story or the core belief, then we're interrogating that. Is it even true? And and you mentioned coping tools and anchors, and also grief of like, yeah, maybe it is true that people might think I look worse now or larger, or that they might think I'm unhealthy based on my size, or lazy, or
But do you think that's true? And even if you do, does
yeah,
that align with your values? Is that
right,
you want to live your life? So a question I'll ask myself is, does this belief bring me closer or further from the values that I want to live by?
right. Is it aligned with your values to judge a person by a picture?
Yeah. And I think that even if you do, right? Even if you find yourself looking at somebody and be like, wow, they've gained weight. If you don't like that you did that,
Right.
that's okay. That's good information of,
Yes.
oh, okay. One of the things, Lindley Ashline, I have a podcast episode with her called Being Seen. um, being seen, I think how to navigate through picture grief, or how to be seen in how to become part of the memories again. That's what the episode is called.
Mm.
Because so many people tell me that, like, I haven't taken a picture in years. There are years where you just don't have photos of me because I could not face the discomfort or distress of being in the photos. And one of the things we've talked about in the episode is, I know even for me, I sometimes don't like how complicit to the beauty standard my brain still is. But once I acknowledged, oh, okay, that's all it is my brain is being complicit with beauty standards, I can acknowledge that without agreeing and co-signing it,
Right.
and without criticizing myself for having that thought.
This piece is so important. Even if you go, yeah, I do look at pictures of other people and judge them and zoom in and scrutinize them. This next piece of like, does that feel good to you? Are you proud of that? Is that how you'd want to raise your child? Or is that your like aspirational way of being in the world? And if not, and if you're listening to this, probably that's not how you want to be,
Yeah.
then we get to look at, well, how do you want to be? What are your values? And obviously that's so much of the work you do. I love using values here with like, maybe I don't like this photo. And this happened to me the other day. We had book club. And it was the day after daylight savings, and I just felt like kind of yucky and tired and somehow hungover, even though I didn't drink the night before. I don't even know. And photos were taken at book club, and I saw them, and I was like, yeah. But what
Hmm.
always helps me is like what are my values? My values right now are play, connection, authenticity. And I'm just like, you know what? I got out there, we laughed a lot at book club, we
Yeah.
connected, I was authentic. It doesn't make it suck less, really. Like, it's still don't like the picture, but it can help with resilience of coming back to like,
Yeah.
this is what matters, actually.
And I have a master class called Resourceful Enough, which funny enough was supposed to be called Resilient as Fuck. But I think that resilience is bred from resourcefulness, is that,
Mm,
from a harm reduction approach, we don't actually have to fix the problem. We just have to stop it in the moment from continuing. And that will create a resourcefulness, or you're choosing resourcefulness. It will create a resiliency. And for reference, I ended up going out for my birthday, and I'm very short. My feet barely touch the ground in most chairs. It often can cause a little bit of body pain. And there would have been a time where feeling pain in my body would have been the most shameful thing of I did this to myself. It would have been the thing that spurred on the next diet. And for me to have for, going out for my birthday, two experiences where I'm like, yeah, my body's in pain and it take up it was like a blip. It barely took up any brain space. And I said, that's the difference. It's not that I
mm,
don't feel pain, it's that the pain is no longer magnified. The
hmm.
joy of living is.
Yes. You have this great thing. I don't even know where it comes from. Somehow I have a Loom video on my computer recording of you reading this um thing you wrote about picture grief, and there's a line in it. It's like you holding your niece in a bathing suit. And there's this line in it that I love so much, and it's grief meet joy.
Mhm.
And I think about that like, yeah, you're allowed to grieve how you look in the photo. It can
Yeah.
be a bummer, right? Sometimes it's like, well, shit, I wish I liked these photos from this event more, and the event has come and gone, and that's a bummer.
Yeah.
But then I want to talk about this as like sort of one of the next tips, like grief me joy. Like, how can we
Mm,
zoom out and think about what was I doing in this photo? What was the point? Like, how was I feeling in the moment? What was the intention behind the photo? What was I trying to capture?
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what that line, grief meet
Oh,
joy, means to you?
yeah, and I know exactly what you're referencing, and I could probably pull it up and I could read it for you here if you want to have access to that. And so that was the second time after that, 2019 failed crop top gate, and I had learned so much from that moment, that then the next time I was like, yeah, I was able to wear a crop top bikini for the first time in my life, and being a creator on the internet, I was documenting it. And when I saw that photo, my body, like I felt the shame, and I felt so upset that that was my response. And so my choice in that moment was, I need to grieve this. I need to acknowledge what grief means here. And so I'd written that first part. And then when I swiped frames and I see this new photo, I was filled with such joy. And I
Mm,
said, this is the healing, because it is the both and, not either or, that I can grieve not liking how my body looked in that photo, but it did not take or steal from the joy of holding my niece. And so I'd taken these photos and she ran up, and my friend had documented this, and she jumped into my arms and we were getting ready to swim. And when I look back at that day, that's what I'm going to remember.
mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the moment I'm going to remember.
Yeah, so just to paint the picture for listeners, the first photo is just you in your bathing suit, and then you swipe and it's you holding your niece. And I think it's such a beautiful kind of like behind the scenes moment. Like, yes, the first photo is just you, and also like what was the context of the day? You were there with your niece and swimming, and she jumped into your arms, and yeah, you have this really powerful line in it too of like you wrote about remembering putting your thumb over your stomach and picturing what it would look like if it wasn't there.
Yeah. 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 Because I think that there's so often this narrative, if I could fix this, if I could just change what I see, then I would not experience this pain. And what we know is that that is not true. Is that even if I was in a smaller body, I might still have pain when I sit.
Yeah, suffering is
Because
inevitable.
pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice, right?
Mm.
We will experience pain, but it is the meaning that you have put around pain. And, we were talking a little bit about values. You know, I believe that we really function from about 3 to 4 values, but
Mhm.
I also think we function from about 3 to 4 wounds as well. And
Mm.
those wounds
Mm.
directly
Oh
correlate.
God, I need to sit with that for a second. Yeah, that is so true.
We struggle with 3 to 4 core wounds. And I could tell you one of mine is the fear of not being loved,
Mm.
right? Of missing out on love. That shows up or used to show up around a picture.
Hmm.
Now I see it around, oh my gosh, I have to say no to this person, and that
Yeah,
might make them mad at me.
yeah,
That is triggering that fear of being unloved.
right. It shapeshifts. Like even if your body was smaller, it would find a new place to rear its head. It's
And when it's not about my body, it's showing up. And so
yeah.
it's really just a mask. It's if you think of the dig, it's showing up on the surface level in body image. But when you dig deeper, it's probably not rooted there. Another fear of mine, or and my clients have said this too, is I don't want to be a burden.
Mm.
That seeing a larger body photo of themselves is evidence that, you know, they will be a burden to somebody. And I assure you that that would occur at any size. Their fear of being a burden, the fear of
Right.
too much is not going to go anywhere just because you lose weight or you like what your photo looks like.
Hmm. Yeah. What my definitely one of my core wounds is being too much.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I want to share this story. I think it's one of the coolest stories about picture grief and zooming out. And I maybe have told it to you before, but a couple years ago, I was working with a client who is a lawyer and she does work on the side for the Innocence Project. Are you
Oh,
familiar with that?
yeah.
Yeah. So for people listening, it's an organization that helps like, lawyers like pro bono help people who are wrongfully convicted of crimes
Yeah.
to, you know, um, to get out of jail in some cases or to just like have justice. And so I was in a session with a client and she's telling me about this photo she didn't like. And I asked her like, when was it taken? What was going on? And she was like, oh, well, this was taken at a party from the Innocence Project where my client who was wrongfully convicted of murder had been in jail for over a decade. And I was like, ma'am, do you hear yourself? Like, literally, like, I get it. It's valid to not like this photo of yourself. I'm so sorry you don't like this photo of yourself. That really does suck. And like, I just think on such a trippy level of like, yeah, 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 your body literally was the vessel that allowed your wisdom and your intelligence of being a lawyer and your like your kindness of donating your time to absolutely, in such a concrete way, change this man's life. And his family was there celebrating. So, like, yeah, it's a bummer to not like your body, and that's valid. And can we also, like, really connect to grief me joy in a freaking huge way? Like, what else was going on here?
Yeah. Yeah. And if grief can meet joy, then it doesn't have to eclipse it
I love that.
because that's
When
what's happening.
I just pictured like Inside Out, like grief and joy, like shaking hands, like the two characters in
Yes.
Inside Out.
I mean, I actually use that inside of my body grievers course and in my provider course, the body image bootcamp, to demonstrate, what sitting in the suck looks like. And that
Yeah.
moment when sadness sits with Bing Bong and it said, "I'm sorry," and Joy's like, blah, 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 like smile, be happy. That's what we want it to feel good, right? If you've ever experienced grief or bereavement, which is like the loss of a person, you know that there is nothing that anybody can say that is going to make your grief suck any less.
Yeah.
But just showing up is sometimes the most powerful thing. That's the invitation for yourself. You don't have to figure out what the right thing to say is. How do I get to show up for myself in this
Yeah.
grief for
Yeah.
myself?
I think about the principles of self-compassion too. Like one is just allowing yourself to just beheld like this does suck. I don't like the way I
Mhm.
look. And it seems so small, but
Yeah.
it's so key of just being like, oh, buddy, yeah, yeah, you don't like the way you look. That
Mhm.
sucks. Like literally what you would say to a friend. And another part of self-compassion that I love so much is this idea of universal suffering of like people hate how they look in pictures all the time. You're not uniquely broken. This is so common to the point where
Mm.
here we are making a podcast about it because it's so common.
Correct.
You're not alone.
Yeah. And I think like there is nothing inherently wrong with wanting to have a body that you like what it looks like. But please make no mistake that that is not body acceptance. That is not going to heal you of distressful or quote unquote bad body image. And most importantly is that it you will still experience pain
Hmm.
no
Hmm.
matter if you like what you look like. But here's the other thing too is if the focus is I need to like what I look like or I need to feel comfortable, for how long? I imagine if anybody's listening to this, you have a friend, a pet, a partner. The equivalency for me, a child, is that like I will love said person when they behave, when they do what I want them to do.
Hmm.
That we have no conflict because one time we went to therapy and now everything is resolved. There's no relationship in this world that exists like that.
Right. Right. I will love my body if it looks good in pictures. It's so conditional.
And then you've made the goalpost of now you're going to hyper focus. And I talk a lot about the hyper fixation of body image when it's like it is all consuming. And what I brought up that photo, montage that we talked about, and I can look at my photo and I can objectively say, I don't care how my body looks here. I don't love it, but I love this photo. I
That's
love this photo and I love this moment. And this moment will live rent free in my brain for the rest of time.
mm, I love that so much, Brie. I want to just close out by talking about this thing that circulates on social media and certainly in body image conversations and circles. Um, it's something along the lines of like, next time you see a photo of yourself that you don't like, remember that when you take a picture of a sunset, it never looks as beautiful as it does when you're witnessing it in
Yeah.
real life with your own eyes. And
Yeah.
I think that's small, but quite big actually,
Yeah.
because I think of that and I think like there is more happening than can ever be captured in a 2D photo. Like
Yeah.
we are our energy, our essence, our aura, as the Gen Z kids are saying. And like sometimes I think like a really skilled photographer can capture that, but sometimes it just doesn't come through in that like pictures aren't like radiating energetic vibes. Like they're flat. They're flat moments in time that are not, I mean, I think videos are actually like probably like a better way to fully capture a feeling.
Correct.
Um, but
It's a
even so, videos can be
millisecond in
triggering.
time, right? Like it's the angle, but I think really more than anything is the expectation of the photo. And I know that when I go into a photo expecting to see what I want, I'm usually disappointed.
Hmm.
But when I go in and the intention is not about being the next supermodel of America, it is not, the only goal of the photo is to capture the memory, is to capture the joy, is to commemorate this experience. It takes the pressure away
Yeah.
from needing to love how my body looks.
Yeah. I also just want to add, I have seen photos of people I love and know in my real life and been like, that's not a great photo of you. Like, I don't know, you're making it like it's like a weird moment. Your face is weird
Yeah.
in that picture, but like I know you in life and you are gorgeous. You are like they might not even use that level of word to describe themselves, but like you are such a beautiful human being.
Oh,
And it's just like I can see that photo and know like that's not a representation of what I see.
yeah,
So the same must be true when it happens
I
to
love that.
me.
And even more so, I can see photos of people that I'm like, "Oh, I don't think that's your best photo," but I don't feel any narrative around it. It just feels like I'll say this to my clients, I don't like olives. I just don't. No, I don't like them, but there's no story about me not liking olives. Like it
Right.
just feels innocuous. Body dislike or body dissatisfaction can be innocuous. We have to take away the power from
Mm.
it first.
I think that's going to be mind-blowing for listeners. Like, what if you don't like a photo of yourself and that's okay? What if you're allowed to not like a photo of yourself?
So sort of I guess like the last tip in the interviewing in the the IFS, I like to bring forward a part that does align with my values. And oftentimes it's either my aunt, how I am to my niece, or as a therapist or as a coach, how would I walk a client through this?
Mm,
And how do I meet them in where they are in a way that feels aligned and true? And the more we can strengthen that narrative and that
neural
value set,
pathway.
100%,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And for people listening, maybe you're not an aunt or a therapist, but like such a easy grab for most people is if your friend sent you a picture and she was like, I really don't like how I look in this, truly, what would you say to her? Like, and how can you try and bring that part forward and say that to yourself also?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna come on after and do a little summary of like here are the tips because there's so much in here and I want to break it down for listeners. Thank you so much, Bree. I know this is gonna be so helpful for folks.
You are so welcome. Did you want me to read that picture?
Let's end with that. That's
Let's do it.
beautiful.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Oh, do you do video on your podcast or no?
Just read it. I
Okay.
do, but just read
So
it.
this photo grieved me when I saw it. My heart sank a little when I noticed my stomach protruding, a part of my body I still aim to make peace with. I covered up my belly in the photo with my thumb, imagining what it might look like to look like that. I began mentally photoshopping all of the parts of my body I would change to make me more conventionally pretty. It saddens me that even I get sucked into the grief of my body, the grief of what others may think of me when they see my body. In that moment, staring at my screen, my body is filled with heat in my chest. It bubbles up in the back of my throat as I hold back tears. It's okay, I whisper silently to myself. It is only a photo, just a millisecond in time. I allow myself to sit in the suck. And then I swipe to the next frame. The heat begins to break apart. Grief, my old friend, meet joy. I connect to the feeling of I connect to the feeling when the photo was taken, pure delight. I remember hearing my niece giggling, her wiggly body pressed against mine. She kisses my cheek, and every fiber of my being lights up. I love her deeply. My niece knows nothing of this body hatred. All she knows is me, whom she loves. To her, my body is good because it is a body. It holds her, it swims with her, it gives her a piggyback ride, it gives her comfort and refuge and a soft place to lay her head. And when she is older, she will have all of the photos of our adventures together. We will be able to look back at our memories, and I won't live in regret of not having the photo, that I dared to defy conventional beauty standards and show up exactly the way I am to memorialize this moment and feeling in time.
Mm. So beautiful, Bree.
Mm.
Oh, the grief, my old friend, meet joy sent chills through my body.
Aw, thank you so much. This is such a good topic, and I believe this is going to be so helpful for so many.
Yes, thank you so much, Bree.